Hello, hello. I am so glad that you are here today with me. My name is Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach, and you are watching or listening to an episode of the Rebound Coach Live. Today's going to be pretty interesting. At least I hope so. I think it's going to be interesting, and I'm excited to share with you about the topic, can a disobedient wife deserve honor? Okay, so if this is your first time watching a Rebound Coach Live, if you're watching the replay or you were here live with me on Facebook or listening over on Clubhouse, thanks so much for coming and sharing your time with me today. This is going to be a doozy. I'm excited. So, just a little bit about me if this is our first time meeting one another. The headline is, y'all, the reason why we're getting to spend time together today. I was married to this dude for 10 years who wanted me dead, unfortunately. And that sounds like a movie plot. It gets thicker, I promise. That didn't make sense for someone like me to have that situation. I was a good kid. I was married. Wow. It's been a long day, but it's going to be all right. I was brought up by two Christian parents. They loved God. They loved each other. They were married for a lifetime. And my father was my mother's caretaker. And so I saw what it was for a husband to have sacrificial love for his bride and care for her. And they were a very good example of marriage. At the same time, I was molested from the time I was 8 to the time I was 16. And that still radically affects how you see yourself. And in a household of faith, how I've related to God and how I related to men. So fast forward, I met the man I married and eventually divorced. But there were definitely red flags and reasons we shouldn't be together and all of that. At the same time, I'm a praying woman. I believed that God's answer was yes. So when I went to God, I believed that God's answer was yes. And because of that, I believed that no matter what would come, we'd be able to overcome it, to outlast it. Somehow things would change and end up okay. And the truth is that those things did happen, just not in the way I was expecting. We got into this cycle. There was trouble right away, and never quite left. We got into a cycle of what I call coping and crisis. It's where you're barely making it with your partner. You never quite get to happy, but you're barely making it. It's a survival mode. And then even that gets disrupted and you're in this crisis place. And so, you come out of your crisis and you get back up to like barely making it. And that was the life we lived for several years. I was very depressed. I was hopeless. I was suicidal, but I was also continuing to show up, continuing to function, keeping the job and doing everything I needed to do for my children and, just doing all the things. And things kind of came to a head end of 2019, beginning of 2020, where we were in a crisis, another one of those crises. He eventually left for another woman. And I found out maybe a day or so later, he and that woman had been plotting my murder for months, actually, by the time I found out. And if you are watching a movie, this is the time the record scratches, and you're like, "What? Hold on, you what now?" And I'm actually going to tell you a couple more shades into the story than I normally would share on a Rebound Coach Live episode, but it goes into the topic of the day. And so I had to face really important questions right then. You're threatened as a wife, as a mom, as a child of God, just as a person on the planet, but also as a coach. I had been coaching faith-based relationships and marriage for about 5 or 6 years by the time all of this took place. So if you can imagine building an identity, building a platform, we live in this world of influencers, right? That's what we call them when they share thoughts around a certain idea. consistently. And so my platform of influence, if you would, was around marriage and how important it is to be married and stay married, and how marriage honors God, and there's no other way. And so if you can imagine building that identity and having that be the very thing that falls apart, and it's like a pregnancy, you can only hide it but for so long. And that's where I was at. So through a divine series of events, I was rescued. God rescued me and my children from that situation, and I'm free. God's blessed me. We continue to grow and unlearn and relearn, and you and I get to share this moment together, which is pretty exciting. That all of these things happened in my life for such a time as this. Out of that story and the divine set of events that occurred, I wrote a book. The book is called I Choose Life, because I could allow the identity that my ex-husband had for me, and quite frankly, that I had agreed to, tell me who I was allowed to be, how loud I was allowed to live, how many days I had left on the planet, how I was able to express my faith or not express my faith, my very identity. So I could allow that to tell me how to live, or I could choose life. So that's why the name of the book is I Choose Life. Rewrite your love story and change your legacy, because we have that power. We have that power to choose life, no matter who's in our lives, no matter what it is that they are demanding of us, they are asking us for. We have the power to choose life. And so this is my story, but not just my story. It has been a handbook and a map for those that have experienced this, or if you have a loved one or somebody you care about who you think might be dealing with domestic violence in any form. So physical, emotional, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, any of it. If you care about somebody who might be going through that, male or female, this book is for them. So you can find this book at thereboundcoach.com/book. That is thereboundcoach.com/book. You can buy one of these physical books that I will personally sign and mail out to you, or you can purchase one through Amazon, which they'll send you, or an ebook. Okay, so wanted to share the tool before we got into today. And normally, if you're a regular here at the Rebound Coach Live, you are used to me sharing a bit and then giving some practical instruction, which is the way most coaches handle things. Today, we're doing some reflection. Okay, that's what we're doing today, because today is International Women's Day. Did you know that? Today is International Women's Day, and it's all about celebrating, acknowledging the contributions of women throughout history and, of course, present day. It's always wonderful to see stories of women present day that are doing amazing things in their sphere of influence, whether that's, in the marketplace, they're out there in business, they're in faith-based, yeah, that's the word. They're in the sphere of kingdom. No matter what sphere of influence they're in, women are doing great things. And so today, hey, Joanne, hey, honey. It is International Women's Day. And so there are a couple women I want to reflect on. And it ties into my story. So not only is it International Women's Day today, it is also yesterday and the day before that was Purim. So I'm a Hebrew believer, so I observe the feast days of the Bible and the cultural celebrations of Judaism, and some of them. Anyway, one of them is called Purim, and it is remembering Esther and remembering what happened with Esther. So most folks who are, know the Bible, they know Esther's story. And, they teach it a certain way. And so today we're going to do a little bit of storytelling, but we're going to look at some details that may not have been in your preacher's sermon. Okay. and what that might mean. So, in the spirit of Purim. Okay, so y'all know the basic story of Esther. Once upon a time, there, and you can find it in your Bible, so I'm just giving the highlights, okay? There was a little Jewish girl named Hadassah, that was her Hebrew name, and she was an orphan, and she was being raised by her uncle. And then there was this king. The king was a worldly king, and he had a queen, and he had asked her to, he was having a 6-month party, y'all. Like, he was having a party 6 months, and then he extended it like another week for like the regular common folk to come party. And then he's like, I want the queen to come and show off her beauty, like just come in her crown and nothing else. So he was essentially like pimping her out, trying to do a peep show. And she was like, nah, I'm not doing that. And he got so upset that he said, you can't be queen anymore. And later on, folks were like, hey, king, you should have a new queen. How about you get one of these hot virgins? They'll be your queen. And so they did like this whole beauty pageant business. And Hadassah, the little Jewish girl, was amongst them. And she won the queendom. And I'm doing air quotes for those of you who are in Clubhouse. By the way, if you use Clubhouse and you would like to join the Clubhouse after chat, you are welcome to do so. You can go over to the Clubhouse app and search the Club Sanctuary XP. The name of this room is just like the name of this episode right here. Can a disobedient wife deserve honor? Okay, so Hadassah becomes queen, and her uncle is like, hey, don't tell anybody you're Jewish. Just say, or I should rather say, don't tell anybody you're Hebrew. Just say, you're Esther from Susa, and that's going to be enough. Okay, fast forward. She's queen for a while, and then there's this antagonist. The antagonist's name is Haman. Haman wants the worship of everyone. In particular, he wants the worship of Mordecai. Mordecai is Hadassah / Esther's uncle. So Mordecai's like, I'm not going to bow to you because, I don't worship other people. Like, I just worship God, and you're not him, so I'm not going to bow. Okay. And Haman's really upset about that. So, so he tells the king, there's people who don't follow your rules, king. There's people who like don't bow down, and they need to be bound down. They need to follow your rules. Matter of fact, we should kill them, right? Like, we should kill them. And the king is like, okay. Don't just kill the one guy, like kill his whole race of people. Okay. So they have a year. This is a detail they don't really tell too much, but there's a whole year between the edict and when it's supposed to happen. Okay. So the folks are scared, and Mordecai says to Esther, like, hey, you should intercede for us. You should intervene. And Esther's like, yo, if I come before the king uninvited, they could have my head. Like, and that wasn't a saying, like, that was real. Like, she could die. And Mordecai is like, don't think that God won't deliver the people some other way. And don't think if you stay silent, God will deliver the people, but you and your father's household will die. And who knows if you were here for such a time as this. Okay. So I know I'm telling more of the story than I should have, but this is important. So she's like, all right, fine. Let's fast. I'm going to fast. My maids are going to fast for 3 days. I want all y'all to fast, like the whole nation of Israel, fast for 3 days. Okay, great. And then the great plan that God gives her is to go ask the king and Haman to come to dinner twice. I'm surmising I'm going fast for a reason. Come to dinner twice. And then she makes her request to the king. Hey, could you spare my life, please? Haman's trying to kill us. And then so the king's like, what? No, and has Haman hung eventually. And the edict that the king made did not get unmade, but there was a counter edict made that the Hebrews could defend themselves. So the day of reckoning came, the Hebrews got to defend themselves. They lived, and lots of people were like, yo, I'm with them. They look like they're pretty powerful people. Okay, the end. Ta-da! Everybody's very happy, right? The Jews are alive. The plot was foiled. The enemy died. All of this, right? So what are we focusing on today? We're focusing on the disobedient wife. So the reason why this is personally significant to me, because again, I shared with you my ex-husband and his adulteress were planning my murder, were plotting my murder. So the same way that there was a plot against the Hebrew people, there was a plot against me and false accusations. And part of that, there's a whole bunch of dynamics in my story that I don't have time to share with you today, but she was seducing him. So this adulteress, this mistress, was seducing him, and not just seducing him to be with her, but seducing him to harm me. And part of the language, it was all very religious language. And part of the language was, she's the disobedient wife. She's like Vashti, and I'm like Hadassah, I'm like Esther. So this is her saying those things. She's saying she's like Esther, and me, and like Vashti, so and literally there was something written that I found later. It said, do you want Satan's wife, referring to me, or do you want God's wife? She didn't use God, she used a different word, referring to herself. And there was a time where that was really painful to me. Because you're using the word of God to basically condemn me, to say that I was from Satan, to say that, she's the wife that God sent. Okay. Now, not getting into their business in the present, because that's not where needs to go at all. But that in that time, that was painful for me. You're like, oh man, I can't believe like she's saying those things, and that's hurtful. And that whole comparison of, because and the reason why, I'll tell you this: anytime some offensive words offend, right? So words can't hurt unless we believe them. Words from other people can't hurt us unless we believe them at some level, right? So her words, why did they hurt me? I don't know her, right? He had many mistresses throughout the time we were married. Why is this person in particular really, really hurting me? Why do those words sting? Well, it wasn't the first time I'd heard things like that. And so the way that the Esther story is told, Vashti is made out to be a villain. And in certain, not going broad brush, but in certain faith-based circles, the virtue of a woman is in how obedient she can be to her man, to her husband. And that's the kind of environment I was in. Okay. And so, preaching against Vashti in particular, like, oh, she didn't obey. Not only did she not obey her husband, she didn't obey the king, right? Like, she was a queen, but he was the king. And how dare she not obey the king? And because she didn't obey the king, she lost her position, she lost her blessing, and people just go down the rabbit trail. Like, she lost her anointing, and she lost her favor, and she lost her blessing, she lost her legacy. Now, wives, you be careful. If you don't obey your husband in all things, bad things are going to happen to you. Like, that's how it's presented. And Vashti, she was so prideful, she was so arrogant that she would deny the king, and she got what she deserved, right? She got banished, and some young, pretty new woman got picked up. Like, this whole narrative, and we got rid of the arrogance so the humble Esther could be there. Okay. Let's look at this. So even in comparison, so like saying, oh, Esther's so humble and so beautiful and so innocent, and she's virtuous, and that's why she saved the day. Okay. doesn't really speak, the scriptures don't really speak to her character in that way. We kind of add our color and flavor as we tell the story. But I can tell you this, that she didn't ask to be there. Okay. They kind of rounded up all the women. It wasn't like, would you like to be the queen? Sign up here. Like, no, they were all, it was human trafficking, essentially. It was human trafficking. And by all intents and purposes, Esther had a title as queen, and she was also a sex slave. Why would you say that? That's horrible to say, Dallas. Okay, so the queens and the concubines of the day, and the women of the day didn't have a whole lot of agency in how they got to live, who they slept with and when. They didn't have a whole lot of agency, especially if you were in the king's palace. Guess what? Your lady bits belonged to the king whenever he wanted them, right? So same for the queen. She could only come when he asked her to come. So as a wife, if you can only get it when your man wants it and not when you want it, right? Does that feel fulfilling? Generally not. Generally, we want this to be a partnership. So it wasn't a partnership. Okay. So we kind of exalt and glorify and, romanticize that situation. But essentially, she was a sex slave, like the other sex slaves that were there against their will, right? Now she had a job to do, and she did the job. God gave her an assignment. God brought her there for such a time as that, for that assignment. And thank God, thank God she did the assignment, right? But she couldn't have been there had it not been for Vashti and Vashti's choices. So let's go back. Can a disobedient wife deserve honor? Okay, so in this case, Vashti is the disobedient wife. And let's look at what she was asked to do. It wasn't just, hey, can you come swing by and smile pretty at me and my drunk friends? It was, hey, can you come and show yourself naked to not only my drunk friends, but the townspeople? Because by then it was the extended feast. He had feasted with his friends for 6 months, and then he allowed an extra week for the townspeople to just wander in and get drunk and eat all they could fill. Okay. And here you get a peep show. Come on, queen, show your stuff. That was a dishonorable request, right? And so she says, no, I'm not going to do that. And the religious leaders of today bought her out for that. However, if we think about it in today's terms, when a husband asks a wife, let's say a husband asking a wife to be a prostitute, hey, I need you to, give sexual favors to my friends for money or for drugs or for favor in my career. Okay. It happens. So let's say a husband's asking a wife to do that. Should she do it? Does that make her a disobedient wife if she doesn't do it? And what does she deserve if she disobeys her husband? Okay, so these are important thoughts. Boundaries. So we talk in the world of survival and trauma survival and healing after trauma, after domestic violence. We talk about boundaries. And this is where we place a boundary and say, I will not do this. I will not do, I'm not going beyond here. And you can do whatever you want, but I am not going to go this. That's essentially what Vashti did. She had a boundary. Okay. And the result of her holding up a boundary was she was no longer in that marriage. She was no longer in that household. She no longer had her title. It doesn't say, that they killed her. Doesn't say where she went to. Doesn't say any of that. It just says she was no longer the queen. So I don't know. Maybe she got to have a better life. Maybe there wasn't a request for her to go do a peep show to a bunch of drunk men. Maybe that's not so bad, right? So it really is all in perspective. So I'm trying to make sure I follow. I don't miss anything. Um, is it okay to self honor, even if that means you're saying no to a certain authority? Because that's essentially what she did. She honored herself and did not honor her husband in that moment, you know. Or, there's other ways to look at that too. Like maybe it is honorable to say, no, I'm not going to allow you to be a fool right now. No, I'm not going to say yes to the foolery. But that's a good question to think of. And then for those of us that have done that kind of thing, because I didn't have a Vashti kind of request, right? But there were other things that I drew boundaries on in my abusive marriage, and I would imagine that anyone who's made it out of an abusive marriage has done the same. You had to say no at some point to a request that came that was sinful, or damaging or harmful or just wrong. Okay, so at some point you had to say no. So for those of us that have, did we miss God? That's another really important question, because women of faith, women who take their relationship with God seriously, get caught up here. And the church and very popular teachings have taught us, to disobey your husband is to disobey God. And they may not say those words. Some of them do. Some of them say what some of them say worse. But even if they don't say those things, that's what those words mean, right? That's what it means. Like, you got to treat him like God, and if you disobey him, you're out of order, and so many bad things happen. They put them, not just a husband, but like themselves as pastors and leaders, like, you got to do all this stuff or you're out of order. Okay. So I don't have an answer for you. I am positioning a question so that you can think about this for yourself. What does that mean? If you say no to sin and that came from an authority figure, what does that mean? And how do you think God feels? And how do you think God sees you? I want to encourage you that, when we say God loves you, it's not conditional on how obedient you are to whatever man is in your life or authority figure. We'll use that because it's not always a man, but he loves you outside of that dynamic. Outside of that, you get to just be loved because you're you. And you have a relationship with God outside of your dynamic with any other person on the planet. Outside of any other person and what they're expecting of you or not expecting of you, you have your own walk with God. And no one gets to walk that walk but you. So I just want to encourage you today. I don't have 3 points in a prayer. This is not that kind of message today, but I just want to encourage you, if you find yourself faced with that kind of choice, know that you can disobey and still hold your head high. You're not condemned. God doesn't hate you. As a matter of fact, he has never left you. And you can make a decision for life in any situation you might be facing. And if you are facing something like that and you want someone to listen to you, my inbox is always open and you can reach out. There's also, if you are in a situation that you think might be domestic violence of any sort, you can always call 1-800-799-SAFE. That is 1-800-799-SAFE. And there are professionals there to listen. Just listen. And it doesn't mean like, for sure it's abuse. They're not going to tell you have to leave. They're just going to listen and offer professional support. So I always make that known as well, that resource is available to you for absolutely free. So I have to tell you, we're doing some amazing things. In just a few weeks, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's like just a few weeks, we are hosting Sanctuary Experience. It is our VIP 3-day retreat, healing and wellness retreat in Clearwater Beach, Florida. It is beautiful, and I'm going to share a short video of Jamie sharing her experience of when she had her first sanctuary experience and what she thought. So I'm going to share that with you and come right back.
Hi, I am Jamie Anderson and I'm from Nebraska. I just spent the most amazing weekend at the sanctuary experience. Do you know what I experienced? I experienced breakthrough. I experienced healing. I experienced sisterhood. I made lifetime friends, women of God. And you know what else I experienced? Everything on this screen. Exactly what it says. Healing, sisterhood, renewal, and fun. If you love yourself, you need to prove it, and you need to invest. Do whatever you have to do. The Lord moved chess pieces in my life for me to get here, and it was the best investment of my life. Dallas Cohen is the person who put this event on, and I honestly, it's the best investment I've ever made. You love yourself, invest.
You can find more information about the sanctuary experience at thereboundcoach.com/sanctuary. That is thereboundcoach.com/sanctuary. I want you to know that even disobedient wives deserve honor. I honor Vashti because she's a woman I can look at in the Bible and say she did not stand for that crap. She didn't stand for it. She didn't allow her husband, even though her husband was the king, she didn't allow her husband to abuse her in that moment. And that makes her a woman of honor in my book. So not only does she deserve honor, if she did not make the choice that she made, the life events wouldn't have happened the way that they happened. And all of it was important. All of it, including her decisions. So I give some honor to Vashti today and honor her decision on International Women's Day. And I just encourage you, if you're coming on over to Clubhouse, I invite you to share, or you can pop in the comments if you're watching the replay here, or Miss Joanne, you can pop in the comments either way. I'd love to hear, are there disobedient women or disobedient wives that you believe deserve honor, or you've seen places in your life that seem like, oh man, I'm not doing the right thing, but God still did something beautiful from that. And so just want to encourage all of you to, listen to those Bible stories, read those Bible stories with a different set of glasses, and see something new. All right. So that's it. Happy Purim. Happy International Women's Day. Know that you deserve honor no matter what your story has been, and in the future, no matter what your story can be. And until next time, folks, choose life.